So we've taken a look at a few language learning games in the past, and I gotta say this one is definitely the most ambitious. This is called TERRA Alia. You can get it right now on PC, Switch, or Meta Quest. Yeah, you can actually play this in VR, which looks pretty awesome. I want to thank 30 Parallel for providing a review code on the Switch. Now, I actually went ahead and purchased a copy on Steam as well, and I'm going to be jumping back and forth between the two. The reason for this is that I have a Switch Lite, so the recording functionality on that is somewhat limited. But I can say that after playing both versions, yeah, it runs great on the Switch. It plays just fine. It looks good. You might get some higher graphical fidelity options on the PC, but whatever platform you're playing on, I think you'll be just as happy. So this is actually a language learning RPG. It currently supports 10 different languages, including English. And the cool thing is you don't have to be an English speaker to play this game. You can choose any of the 10 languages to be your native starting language and any of the 10 languages that you want to learn. I dabbled in both Japanese and Spanish. You play as a student at a magic school, and in order to grow as a magician, you have to learn a new language. There's a lot going on here. Basically though, you start out at school, you have a mentor who's in trouble and she's sort of guiding you along from a distance. You explore the campus and scan every object you see along the way. Scanning objects is as simple as selecting the item and clicking on it or pressing a button on it, and then it'll show you the name of that object in the language that you're learning along with your native language, and you'll hear a native speaker pronounce the word in your chosen language as well. So it's a great way to pick up new vocabulary, and you'll be quizzed on this time and time again throughout the game. You'll also be picking up various quests as you go along. You might help a student find her lost wand, you might take down some bullies, sneak into a shady corporation and find incriminating evidence. It gets a little more deep as you go on. Now, this isn't just some adventure game though. No, this is a full-on turn-based RPG. This means you'll be getting into a bunch of battles, you'll be leveling up your character through skill trees and trying to obtain better equipment. The battle system is surprisingly deep and there's a bit of a learning curve. You'll have different types of spells that require different resources, and different enemies may be weak to certain types of spells. Every spell takes a certain amount of time to cast. So it's a turn-based system, but it has an active time mechanic. If you can strike while your opponent is trying to cast a spell, you essentially cancel out their turn. They can do the same to you, which is always frustrating when it happens. So it'll keep you on your toes and you'll have to watch the time meter closely and carefully judge how much time you have until your opponents land their hits. After each battle, your health is automatically replenished, which is nice. However, your lingua, which is needed for many types of spells, does not recharge itself. You'll have to practice your vocabulary words in order to refill it. This is as simple as just heading over to any one of the game's many ATMs, which are all over the place. But this isn't the only way you'll be practicing your language. You'll come across many different NPCs who present challenging dialogues where you'll have to translate sentences and respond to them in your chosen language. Luckily, this is never very difficult because your robotic bird buddy will give you a practice lesson beforehand that goes over exactly what you need to say. You'll also obtain a bunch of item chests, and these have to be unlocked by matching up the words from the language you're learning to your native language. So it has all these different ways of kind of keeping your mind going, trying to reflect on the new vocabulary you've learned and kind of just reinforcing that, quizzing you over and over again so that they stick. Between the dialogue challenges, the matching challenges, and the scanning of objects, there's a nice balance of immersion and reinforcement as you gradually learn more and more vocabulary. And underneath all of this is still a pretty ambitious, if short, RPG. Now, I do have one gripe and one concern about the game. My gripe is that a lot of times I didn't know what I was doing or where I was supposed to be going. Now, you have a quest journal that gives you clues and kind of tells you what to do next, but it just doesn't always work out that way, and the map doesn't really tell you what anything is. For example, in the beginning, you're supposed to find a black flower in the old garden. Now, my problem was I didn't know what the old garden was. I looked on my map. Nothing is marked on the map. There is no writing. There are no names of locations. It doesn't tell you, oh, this is so-and-so's office. This is the old garden. No, so I'm running in circles for way too long around campus, checking every part of the garden, not finding the old garden. It turns out I needed to finish another quest in order to open up the old garden, which I did not know. Even when I opened it up, I still wasn't really sure if that was the old garden, but eventually I figured it out. Still, I wasted way too much time doing that. Later on in the city, I pretty much did all the city quests, or so I thought, and it told me I should go back to Lorenzo. So I go back to the spot I came from. Lorenzo wasn't there. I was completely confounded at this point. Where the heck was Lorenzo? There are no waypoints on the map. There was nothing to tell me where I was supposed to be going. Apparently, I had to go do a bunch of other unrelated stuff to get back to Lorenzo. I had no clue. I spent so much time wandering around the city, getting into battle after battle, until I just got fed up. I completely lost my patience at that point. So my only thing is I would love it if they could just add a little bit more guidance, elaborate a bit on the map, give better clues, or add some waypoints so that people like myself don't waste hours and hours getting nowhere. My other concern is about the language. Now please take this with a grain of salt because I don't know anything, okay? I'm not an expert in any language. I can barely speak English, my native tongue, and I'm an absolute beginner in everything else. But one thing I noticed that I'm speculating here, especially during my Japanese playthrough, was that you just come across a lot of rude characters, right? You'll get into a lot of conflicts, which makes a video game interesting. But it's not the kind of language I'm going to be wanting to use when I travel to Japan one day. From what I can tell, there's a lot of very informal or improper dialogue, and since this game seems to be directly translated into all these 10 different languages, I just wonder if some things are lost coming from a cultural perspective in any one of these languages. Like, is this really how people talk? However, again, what do I know? I'm just throwing it out there. I thought I should mention this. But with that being said, no, I do think this game is a great way to pick up new vocabulary and kind of increase your understanding, get used to listening to the way words are pronounced and the way sentences are formed and things like that. It won't really spell out all that as far as forming sentences. You'll just be kind of exposed to it. It's kind of like a level of immersion, I guess. So I do think that's a good thing. It forces your mind to think about the way things are working and kind of ask yourself, why is it this way or that way? A lot of things are spelled out for you, but not all the specifics are there. So that's very good. But I also think that, this is just a great tool to have in your kit. If you're learning a language, you're not going to rely on any one thing. You're not going to rely just on this game. You're not going to rely just on a textbook. You're not going to rely just on watching, well, I do hear stories of people just watching TV to learn English or something, but for me, I like to have many different resources. I like to actually read and listen and do this and that. And I think this is a very fun, immersive, innovative way to learn, honestly. It would have been a lot more fun if I didn't get lost all the time and just feel so confused. But, I think it's more fun than a textbook, and it's definitely something to try out. So I hope I wasn't too hard on this thing. For what it's worth, the production values are great. It's got a really surprisingly complex RPG foundation to it, which is really fun and really interesting. And yeah, I've learned a lot of vocabulary, even in my short time with it so far. And even though it's a pretty short game, I think it's safe to say probably around a 6-hour game for most people. You can always play through it again in all 10 languages. You can be a polyglot or a fledgling polyglot, right? Very cool game. It's worth checking out if you're interested in learning languages and if you enjoy RPGs as well. So definitely check it out. Thanks again to 30 Parallel for the review code. I appreciate it. Thank you all for watching today. You have a good one. I will see you next time.